All right, looks like we're good to go get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live demo, TigerGraph 101, an introduction to graph databases. We're happy to have you join us today. My name is Chris Smith, and I'll be the host for this session. We have an exciting and informative presentation lined up for you. We'll be featuring a deep dive into powerful features of TigerGraph products while demonstrating functionality and use cases. Our expert speaker today, John Herkey, will be walking through the demo and sharing his insights. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. For best experience, your microphones will be muted and your video turned off during the presentation to help reduce noise and distractions. We encourage you to ask questions. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. If you encounter any technical issues, please let us know by using the chat function. Our support team is standing by to assist you. Today's webinar is being recorded. We'll share the recording with all registrants after the session. So, let's see. Okay, sorry. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, John Herkey. John brings a rich background of technical expertise and innovation with an 8-year tenure as a networking engineer in the military and a diverse 7-year experience at Optum United Health Group. John has contributed significantly to the field, earning 2 patents in the graph and medical space. John has been recognized by Forrester with top rating, showcasing a deep commitment to technology and community engagement. And with that, I'll hand it over to John. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris, for the introductions, and then just a little bit more about me. I've also been in your shoes. So before being here at TigerGraph, I was also a customer. As I was working at Optum United Health Group, we were trying to explore how to connect all of our data in real time. We needed to be able to access our data across all of these disparate systems. And it was nearly impossible until we started to stumble upon different graph technologies and benchmarking different graph technologies. And ultimately, of course, I went with TigerGraph as we're here today. But being able to unlock your data was something that we're unable to do. And by unlocking the data, by pulling all the data together, we're able to affect the lives of millions of folks across the world. So that was my excitement about being here at the company, was as a user of TigerGraph. I've been there on the other side, have had the impact of using this technology. And what I really wanted to do was share that technology with others. And so that's really why I'm here today. So a little bit about the session, what we're going to go through. If you go into the chat, you'll see a guide. I'm hoping everybody can access it. It should be shareable for everybody. There's a lot of materials that we'll be covering today. And what I wanted to do is make sure that we had some kind of way to index all the different things that we're going to be talking about. So the first one is really, how do you get started with TigerGraph or graph databases? There's a lot to learn. Where do you go? Where should be your first step? And that's where we have TigerGraph University. So if you have this guide, you can follow along by clicking some of these links, but I have some of these open in the tabs up here. So TigerGraph University does encompass a lot of different materials across a lot of different domains. So whether you're a machine learning expert, or you're an administrator, or you're looking at how to do graph analytics for the first time, or interested in the products, you can access all these different educational courses. They're all for free, and you can just dive into this, register for them, sign up, and you can click into learning more about this different topics. I'll just click on one for right now so everybody can see. So if this is probably the one I would start with. If this is your first time learning about TigerGraph, have never heard, maybe you've heard about TigerGraph and you're just trying to take your first step, I would start maybe with the GSCO one. It does have an introduction to TigerGraph. It goes through some of the products, and we'll go live through some of these different things like the Graph Studio. You might also be curious of how to write queries. There's different patterns that you can use for query development and schema development, and they have the best practices here. So this is a really great course, and I highly encourage everybody to go through these courses to be able to learn about whatever they're interested in, whether you're an administrator, a sysadmin, or you're writing the queries themselves. At the very bottom, you'll see that there's certifications. So after you've consumed these different courses, after you can, I'm just going to share this guide. Oh, thank you so much, Chris. After you consume all these different courses, you can go into the certification as well. So there's associate certification. So this is sort of a high level broad introduction to TigerGraph, introduction to graph databases, some questions about the language itself. So that is a general certification if you want to get that certification, or if you're more into the analytical side, you might want to take the graph algorithms machine learning course. So that starts off with how to get started with graph databases, and it goes through all those different topics that we just talked about. The next section that we're going to go to is, now that you've learned a little bit about TigerGraph, learned about sysadmin, learned about insights, learned about the cloud product, how do you get started? There's a couple different ways that you can get started with TigerGraph, and there's TigerGraph SaaS, we have TigerGraph Lite, and we have TigerGraph Downloads. So I'm going to go through each of these just so you can get familiar with how to get started with TigerGraph and get your hands on it. So the first one we're going to do is TigerGraph Downloads. All right, I'll have to fix the link. So TigerGraph Downloads, this is where you're going to, if you're going to install, you're going to do a local install, or you have an environment set up at your enterprise, or you just want to install it locally to test it on your development environment. What you can do is you can download the latest TigerGraph package here. So you'll see some of them are labeled LTS. That's the long-term support, and how long the support is offered is also listed here as well. If you're going to use Docker, you can use Docker pull, but you can also get the Docker image here as well. And the last thing, it's not necessarily the database itself, but it is a client that allows you to interface and write your GSQL code and deploy that code. And we'll go through some of the code examples here in a little bit. This GSQL client you can have on your desktop, and you can interface through your command line and then directly interface with your solution. So the next way, I'm going to go actually skip down to TigerGraph Lite, because when we go to the SaaS TigerGraph Cloud, I will go into some of the current products that we have as well. So if you want to use TigerGraph through one of the cloud providers, we're in all the marketplaces. So you can go to any of these links, whether you're going to go to AWS. You can deploy TigerGraph here on AWS if you have an AWS account, and this is the easiest way for you to deploy. I highly encourage you to try TigerGraph Lite. With a click of a button, you can get set up and started. The one caveat for TigerGraph Lite, and the reason why it's called TigerGraph Lite, is the ability to only go on a single server. So it doesn't allow you to do a horizontal scale, but you can do a vertical scale. So you can vertically scale this to the maximum amount. That's one reason why this is called TigerGraph Lite. So now let's go to TigerGraph Cloud. So TigerGraph Cloud is the cloud SaaS offering that TigerGraph has. So if you don't want to manage your own, do the install, do the configuration, do the setup, do the monitoring, do everything else that you would have to do if you built this locally, TigerGraph Cloud is a great option. So I'm just going to open this up. So if it's your first time, I'm probably already logged in, but if it's your first time, it'll bring you to a login screen. And what you want to do there is just create an account. It'll ask you to create an organization. I'll talk a little bit about organizations. And then what you'll do is have to verify your email, and then you'll be able to see something similar to this. So again, I'm not going to go a deep dive into all of this. There's going to be TigerGraph 101 sessions that go a deep dive into cloud management and to Graph Studio, but I do want to cover enough so you can have enough awareness of all the different things that are out there so you can get started on the journey. So up on the top left here, you'll see your organizations. I have quite a few organizations. And an organization, you can have different people in your organization. So let's say you're working with multiple departments wherever you're at, and maybe you want to have an organization per department, and that department has a lockdown. What you can do is have the organization for that department listed and all the different clusters in here. You can even go fine-grained control with the user management. Again, I won't go through all of the different things in here, we'll have another session that goes through the user management. You'll see the activities, networking, and billing as well. So for billing, that's where you put your credit card in to pay for the service or the credits. There is the ability to create a free instance. And so if you're following along, what you could do is create an account right now, get your hands on TigerGraph, and use the free instance. So I do have a free instance deployed that we'll go through here, but I do want to show you the process of creating a cluster. So the first thing you'll do when you log in for your first time, what you'll actually see is a create cluster button that's right in the middle here. Since I have clusters that are already built, you'll see the create cluster button here on the top right. So the first thing you'd want to do, and if this is your first time using TigerGraph Cloud, what you'll probably be auto-selected as on free. So free, you can get started. You'll have a bunch of different options, but it'll be limited. There are caveats with that, and with the free version. With the free version, if you're inactive for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, your solution will pause. It's not going to be terminated, but it'll just pause. When you're active again, you can just start it up and continue to use it as well. The other caveat is, let's say you just do not use your free instance for over a week, just never logged in, never touching anything. You'll get a notification, but your instance will be terminated if you do not use it and you're inactive. So those are the two caveats when you're using the free version. So below here, you can choose where you want your cloud or your solution deployed. If you're AWS, you can choose AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. You can choose the region that you want to be in. You can choose how big of a footprint, a hardware footprint you want. Do you want to have 32 gigs of memory, 64 gigs of memory? You can choose all those different things there. What's your partition factor and replication factor? That's another option as well. And then the versions you have. So you can choose the versions. Lastly, here you can specify what you want to label this cluster as, and you can get a subdomain. So if you want to have your own custom subdomain instead of a bunch of characters, feel free to call it, John Herkey's TigerGraph Cloud Solution, and then you'll have that subdomain as well. The last part of here is you can choose to do no solution kits, or you can have a pre-existing solution kit. So the solution kit or starter kits in this case, the one I have deployed and the one we'll go through here in a little bit is the COVID-19 analysis. So the COVID-19 analysis is pulling real data from South Korea, and when they're tracking the spread of COVID at that time. So there's a lot of interesting data with patients, infecting patients, and geolocations, and events that happened where somebody went to a hospital and there was an infection event. So it's a very interesting that starts to show sort of a tracing pattern. So if you're interested in tracing patterns, it's sort of a nice starter kit or solution kit that you can go to. Now, if you're interested in healthcare or anti-fraud or 360 or supply chain, these are a bunch of different solution kits or starter kits that you queries. They have the data, and then all of a sudden you have your first solution. So feel free to explore any of these. Again, you only have one free solution when you get started. So if you're interested in deploying multiple of these, what you'll have to do is either terminate that solution to spin up another one, or what you can do is put your credit card in and pay for the other one. Feel free to automatically, turn down your account if you want. You pause your account, so you can have settings where you want to pause your account. Let's say you just want to deploy multiple of these. You can set up configurations to also pause your account as well. So once you have everything selected here, what you could just do is create the cluster, and that'll take a few minutes to spin up that cluster for the first time, and then you'll have it ready. So once it's ready, it'll look a little bit like this. So we're going to go into my cluster. I didn't choose to give it any fancy domain. I'll terminate this cluster after the session. You can see my domain in here as well. But a little bit about going into your cluster. What we're going to do first is go to the tools and Graph Studio. We'll cover some of these other ones: TigerGraph Insights, GSQL Shell, a little bit of Admin Portal. So these are also listed in our guide here as well. So feel free to click on these and see and learn more about these. But we'll go through a little bit of this while we're here at this session. So let's go back here. So the first thing I want to do is go to Graph Studio. And this is probably the easiest way if you're getting started with TigerGraph for the first time, is using Graph Studio, because Graph Studio allows you to develop your solution essentially with no code. So you can design your schema, you can design your loading jobs, you can design your queries. Now queries you'll have to write, but we'll go a little bit about the GSQL queries, and Insights also does some pattern matching. We'll go through some of that as well. So the first thing you'll do probably when you get started with one of these starter kits, let's say this is your first time, you have never built a model before or designed anything, you start with this starter kit. It's going to be on a global view. So the first thing you want to do is go down to your My Graph. And the reason why you have different options here is TigerGraph allows multi-graph capabilities. So that means you have a global view of all of your schema. And then what you can do is have a graph and another graph, and those graphs could interlink, which means that you're able to have a separation of those graphs, but there also is a connection of those graphs. So what we'll have here is My Graph, which is the solution, the default name for this starter kit. And then this is your design schema. Again, we won't go through sort of every icon, but I do want to give you, how to get started. So you go to design schema, and if let's say this starter kit wasn't here, what you'd want to do is click the add vertex type. So this is how you add your vertex types and then your properties along with it. I won't add one for this particular one, but I will double click on this one so we can see it. So this schema was designed at the global level, so that's why you see these are grayed out. So you'll see that they're global by this little global icon. But in this vertex, we have birth date and a patient number and their contact number, their confirmed date, release date. And so through the schema builder, what you can do is design your schema for the first time. Again, if it's your first time and you've never designed a schema or haven't done anything with property graphs, go back to the TigerGraph University, and that will go through step by step of how to get started with designing and building your first graph solution. So the next thing you'd want to do is you create a vertex, and you'd want to create an edge. So the next button you'd want to click is this Create Edge button. And so from there, you'll have something that looks a little bit like this, where you can label the edge. You can say if it's directed or non-directed, and you can specify where it connects to. So that's a little bit for the design schema. So there's a couple different phases. You have first, you design your schema. The second part is you'd want to load your data. And when you're doing your schema design, you're looking at your data most of the time to try to think about how to think in graph and how to visualize stuff in graph. And I do have a project that is looking at a really famous relational database called Northwinds. And this will be a sample project that you can access as well. And it goes through, here's the relational database, and here's a schema. This is how the schema looks. And then it also has, here's SQL and here's GSQL. So you can get a little bit of a comparison on the differences between the relational versus property graphs. So again, the next part is you can load your data. I'm not going to go through all of these, and I won't go through all the different examples. But let's say for this particular starter kit, it did have some local files. You would click the local file, and then you would add it to the server. So once the file's added, so let's say we just added, let's do the populated, let's do this one. So once the file's added here, again, this is the no code option. So what you're doing is literally dragging and dropping your connections. So on the right-hand side, you'll see patients. This is the patient vertex with all the attributes that we just defined. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see your CSV. So this is a patient info CSV file. This is the columns for that CSV, and this is the first row of the data. So you're looking at column patient ID, maps with the patient ID. The birth year matches with the birth year. And so all you have to do is click on this. Here, I'll just delete one right now, and then you drag and drop. So again, no code, you can get started, put your data in here, drag and drop. And then what you want to do at the end is click this start button. So this will load all your data that you currently have. And I'm going to just leave. And we'll go quicker through a couple of the other ones. I just wanted to go a little bit through here because this is probably your starting point once you have it installed, whether you're going TigerGraph Lite or SaaS or Docker, you're going to have Graph Studio, and Graph Studio is probably going to be your first entry point to developing your solution. Explore Graph, just once you have your data in there, what you can do is look through your data and see how it's interconnected. Sometimes I like to use this view personally just to explore the data and the relationships, and it helps me think how I want to write a query. But this is a great way to just sort of verify and check that everything loaded correctly, how you wanted it, how you expected it. And then the next thing we're going to do is go to write queries. So this is sort of the last area I'll cover in Graph Studio before we go back into some of the other products. So a little bit, I'm not going to go again through the language. There's the GSQL TigerGraph University course that can go through how the language works. But if you have some SQL background and maybe a programming background, it's probably not super unfamiliar. You have a select, you have a from, a where. I think the new concept will be the ability to do a traversal. So you're starting from a certain vertex and you're going to another one. That will be something that will take some time to learn. And the other thing is the accumulator functions. So in TigerGraph, the GSQL language, it's a turning complete language. That means you can do a lot of like computational things. You can have functions, you can have if statements, while statements. And so it's a very powerful language that allows you to do a lot of things with your data as you're doing the data traversals, or after you did the traversal of your data and you're doing stuff post traversals as well. One thing to note here is once you have your queries installed, you'll see something called your query endpoint. So this makes TigerGraph really easy to extend into anything. Anything that has the ability to call a REST endpoint, you can literally connect to it. So let's say we just created this query, age distribution, and we wanted this age distribution to tie in with XYZ system. XYZ system could just pull this new query or call this query. And then what it's going to do is execute your GSQL and then push that JSON payload to whatever system it is, or you're going to fetch that. So that's a little bit about Graph Studio. And then I'm going to go through a couple different other areas. I'll answer all the questions here at the very end. All right. So I'm going to go to GSQL shell. So I did talk about the downloads, and there was this GSQL client. This is a web version of that GSQL client. So what it's allowing you to do is execute some of those commands. For example, in this case, I'm going to use mygraph, or mygraph. So I'm using the use graph mygraph. There's a command called ls, and what you want to do is you can get sort of a printout of your vertex types, your edge types, the properties within them. You have your graph with all the vertices. You have your loading jobs. So these are all the loading jobs. Again, I did not write the code, but we used the Graph Studio to map the different elements. But this is what the code looks like under the hood. So Graph Studio is just enabling you to do all of those different code writing without having to memorize and learn every single aspect of GSQL. So you can write this code. Again, there are a lot of project examples that I'll share with you as well. But the GSQL shell allows you to sort of do that web interface right here in TigerGraph Cloud. I think for the next one, what I'm going to do is go through, we can go through our admin portal quick as well. Admin portal allows you to do a lot of different monitoring. So under the hood of TigerGraph, you have a lot of processes and that are running. So you could do a gAdmin status if you're going to run and do that on your local computer that it's installed on. The other thing is you can look sort of at the statuses here. So this is a nice dependency chart on all of the different services that are currently running. So you, of course, want to have everything online. So everything looks green, but this will give you sort of a high level view of being able to see all those services. If for some reason you need to start services or restart services, you have those abilities again to do through the the web portal, I should say. A lot of these you can also do directly in your terminal as well. There's the ability to do some query monitoring, and probably logs is more important. So you might, if you run into some kind of error, that you're trying to diagnose what's going on. The logs are really key to be able to trace back and sort of see what's happening. So that's a nice thing to have really excuse me, really built into sort of this web interface product. Other things you can do is local user management, and you can see the different components here as well. So you can do some of the configuration for some of the services. With that, I do want to go to TigerGraph Insights. I think we're good on time. So TigerGraph Insights. Actually, I'll go back and I'll go to Cloud V4. So another thing that we have that's coming out is our Cloud V4. So this, again, the links are all in here. If this is something you want to try on your own time, feel free to click on this. What it does in Cloud V4 is it has a separation of the storage and compute. So that's the huge difference of the Cloud V4 is it optimizes that. So when you're doing the compute, it's not tied in with, so it's a bigger architectural change versus the old version. So again, if you want to try the separation of storage compute, you could do it here. I won't go through a lot of the features. A lot of this is going to be similar to what we've just gone through. You have the design schema, you have your load data, you have your editor tool, you have Explore Graph. The one thing that you'll have to keep in mind is they have add-ons. So like TigerGraph Insights, it's not automatically going to be tied to your solution or your workspace. What you're going to have to do is make sure when you're setting up your solution for the first time is that you're checking one of these add-ons. So if you want Graph Studio, if you want TigerGraph Insights, you're just going to want to make sure you check those options so they come with this as you install it for the first time. So I'm going to go through TigerGraph Insights quickly. So TigerGraph Insights allows you to have a visualization tool that's natively integrated with TigerGraph. I really wish I had this when I was at Optum, because what we had to do, we're not front-end developers. We didn't have front-end developers. We knew Python, so we're using all these different tools in Python to create front-end dashboards for the business units. So that was one of our pain points, was not having the ability to natively do a lot of things that we wish we could do, taking JSON and putting some visualizations in front of that. So TigerGraph Insights is natively integrated with TigerGraph. So out of the box, you don't have to do anything, and you could start to use all these different components. There's 13 different widgets that come with this. I'll just drill into one of them so you can sort of see the different charts. So they have the graph view. So this is the traditional, see the different connections between your different data elements. You have the bar charts, line charts, scatter charts, pie charts, Sankey diagrams, tables, value widgets, input boxes, maps, and then you also have Markdown. So if you want to embed PDFs or if you want to embed videos, you can also include that as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can write the code directly in these widgets to return things. The other way is, we can show the schema that's connected to this one. The other way is you can just sort of go address card. So you're doing this sort of no code traversal. I'll put a disclaimer out there. If you're gonna do a traversal and this is gonna go into production, it might be better to optimize sort of that traversal so you're not returning a lot of data or processing things unnecessarily. But it is a good way for you to sort of no code, just sort of pattern match and say, hey, I want to go from here. And this is going to change the widgets, so I won't do it right now, but you can choose, like, let's say a table. I think I can apply this without, okay, I just changed the widget. That's totally fine. But yeah, so basically what you can do is you can go through here and you can see like this widget just changed here to a table, which is fine. That no code tool allows you to sort of no code and pattern and return your data as well. One of the other interesting parts here is that you can have your data refresh periodically. So if you want your data to refresh every 15 seconds and it's going to do an execution and pull that data onto this dashboard, that's possible. You can embed these widgets into, let's say you have your own system, you want to do a full embedding. Let's say the other thing is you can do a drill in. So let's say this whole dashboard and you want to click into here and do a lookup and go to another page and then pass a value to the other page and refresh that whole page. So if you're going to do like let's say you're just looking at credit cards, you can deep dive into a credit cards and has a whole credit card page. So there's a lot of capabilities that allow you to interconnect all the different widgets together and all the different pages. So it makes it a really great system for you to have a front end to your solution. I think we're running out of time, but I did want to cover a few last things. So as you're doing a lot of development, you have probably a lot of different questions that you might run into. There's a huge community out there that thousands of developers are communicating in. Our TigerGraph staff is also here answering questions, helping other community members, are helping other community members. So one thing I would check out first, if you run into a problem, is go to the community forum and you can just type in how to connect to TigerGraph or how to connect to TigerGraph, which is a Python connector. And there's probably somebody that ran into something at some point, and there's probably some kind of example code or how to get past that that issue that you're currently experiencing. So feel free to go to utilize the community forum. If you are a customer, you can use TigerGraph support. So there's a support portal, and you can get support from our technical support engineers. If you have questions, you can go into the documentation. It's a very verbose documentation with lots and lots and lots of examples, everything from how to do the execution of built-in endpoints to one-hop queries, two-hop queries. Every single, let's say we talked a little bit about accumulators and not sure how to do the syntax for SummaQueue. You can go into the documentation, go to SummaQueue, so it's going to have an example for you. So it's a very verbose documentation, and you can find most answers there. Nowadays, you can also cheat with ChatGPT, and you can say, using TigerGraph's documentation, can you write an example of whatever this is? And it'll actually have a hyperlink to TigerGraph's documentation where it's pulling some of that data. The other thing is you could try the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel has a lot of historical great videos. One of my favorite ones there is the TigerGraph 100 times faster, and it goes through a deep dive of the architecture and how TigerGraph was designed to be scalable. So that's a great video, but feel free to check that out. And the last thing I'm going to talk about here is DevLabs. So DevLabs has a bunch of open source projects. I did briefly mention this Northwinds one, which is a relational database. There's a couple of different examples. So let's say you're a Python developer and you want to deploy TigerGraph for the first time. It does a full walkthrough of how to create your vertices, your edges, how to create your graph, how to connect to it, load your data. It's literally every single thing is in here, how to run your queries, install your queries. The full project is here. If you want to just execute the GSQL code, you could go to GSQL as well, and you can see the scripts that are running to do. Oh, these are high-level executing the shell scripts. Let's go. All right. So you have the code here, and then what's going to do is it's going to execute some of this code here using shell scripts. So I'll just go back one layer here. Oh, one other thing. So I did briefly mention this. So I talked a little bit about if you're coming from SQL space, this is another great project. It goes through, here's a select statement, here's SQL, and here's GSQL. So it gives you sort of a reference. And the last thing, going up to the high level. So this just has a lot of different open source projects, whether you're trying to build a full stack app for the first time, if you're looking at AML simulations, and it's got a Python lab for that. There's a lot of different tools, connectors, and things that people have contributed over time. And this is a great sort of repository to go to. And with that, that's the end of our time here for this session. And hopefully you got a high-level overview of everything. Throughout these TigerGraph 101 series, we're going to do drill downs and go through certain aspects that we just discussed today. So even if we went high level over sort of deploying on the cloud, there's going to be another session that goes through cloud deployments and managing your cloud. Even though we went through a high level of Graph Studio, there's going to be other TigerGraph 101 sessions that we're going to go through and go through a build by a full build. So starting from scratch to writing a query. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for questions.
All right, great, John. Thank you for that insightful demo. Yeah, just like John said, we're going to move on to Q&A. If you have a question, please go ahead and add it into the QA tool at the bottom, and we'll get right to it. There's a couple. So John, here's the first question. What's the easiest way to get started?
I would say TigerGraph University. That's where I would start. Like it's my first day, I heard of TigerGraph. I'm starting to explore different things. I probably go to TigerGraph University just so I can get a high level overview I do see somebody asking about accumulators. That is mentioned in the TigerGraph University as well in the course. But that's where I would go for the first step. And I can answer the question about the accumulators. So accumulators, when you're doing an accumulator, as you're doing your data traversal or your traversal of your graph, so you're starting for our example, we had patient, and there's an edge to another patient. So let's say we wanted to do an accumulator function for max sum accum, right? So every time we're going to do the traversal from patient to patient, we're just going to have a sum accum that's a plus equals 1. And so the plus equals 1, it's going to, every time it executes sort of that, it's going to cross, across the edge the patient, it's going to do a plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. So you might have, maybe that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how many patients somebody's infected, and we're doing a count. So we might want to count as we do that. But the accumulators, there's a lot of different accums. So you have like a list accum, sum accum, map accum, heap accum. A lot of these words you're probably familiar with. And the difference is you're doing some kind of accumulation of you're doing something as you're doing your data traversal. So I would definitely check out the TigerGraph University. And then also the documentation literally has an example of every single accumulator as well. So it's a great way to get started. How to refresh your token. So yeah, so there's and I should include this as well. I have a whole Python handbook that I could add to this documentation. It goes through every single Python function or TigerGraph function. And one of those is to get a token. To get a token, if you have your username and password, that one doesn't have refresh token. Oh, refresh token. Yeah, we'll get a new token. If there's not a function that's in PyTigerGraph that you think should be in PyTigerGraph, easily create something that doesn't exist. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge. But I believe you can use so you can use your secret to generate a token to refresh your token. I don't know if that function is in there, but that's something we can look into.
Right.
All right. Any other questions?
So I don't see any right now. So why don't we go ahead and close? I think this has been great. I want to thank you all for your participation. We hope you found today's webinar informative and valuable. A special thank you to John Herkey for sharing his expertise with us. As a reminder, the recording of the webinar along with resources will be available to you shortly. Also, please fill out the survey at the end of the presentation to give us some feedback. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us by emailing info@tigergraph.com. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.